Episode 12 of the Geekdom101 podcast, the original air date November 18th, 2018, as we revisit the original 7 Rocky movies joined by Reel to Reel. This was right before Creed 2 had come out, so him and I have talked for hours off the air about Rocky and the whole franchise and how much we love it. So with this podcast, we discuss everything, like all the Rocky movies in detail, from the best and the worst, our favorite moments, the origins, Creed 1, just how the whole franchise went. So let's begin the Geekdom101 podcast, episode 12. And welcome back to our Rocky retrospective here on the Geekdom101 podcast. We're going to go through the 7 previous Rocky movies, Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Balboa, and Creed. Creed 2 will be hitting theaters very, very soon, and we're all excited about it because, hey, whether or not the Rocky movies are all perfect, they're all fun, and the franchise gets better and better. So we're going to talk about that here on this episode and go back, starting with Rocky 1976 all the way up. Joining me to discuss this, please welcome, for his first appearance ever on the Geekdom101 podcast, but if you've been following me for a long time on Geekdom101, the YouTube channel, or the World of Geekdom, you've heard his voice before. The king of the wacky theories, the king of Saw, and what else are you the king of, bro?
I don't know. Maybe American Horror Story these days, honestly.
American Horror Story. Something with horror. Reel to Reel is here. Reel to Reel Productions, or is it Pro? Yalco Productions. Whatever.
What's up, man?
I said what's up.
What's up, man? Like, it's good to be here, honestly. I've been actually really clawing at the bit to actually get on this podcast at some point, and I think that this is just the perfect opportunity and the perfect discussion topic, so thanks for having me, man.
Well, also, one of the topics you brought up very interestingly before was a while back, you're like, let's do a video comparing Star Wars 7, Rocky 7, and Fast and the Furious 7. Remember that? Like 2 years ago you said that?
Oh, yeah, back in what?
2015.
Yeah, 2015. All 3 of those 7 film franchises came out with their 7th installment. So it's like, wow, that's interesting.
And they all made a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money. Yeah, well, now we're here talking about Rocky. I mean, I recently, Mark, well, first of all, okay, before we talk about that, go ahead and plug all your stuff now. That way everybody kind of is aware of where they can find you.
Oh, yeah, like you can definitely find me on YouTube. Like you already said, Reel to Reel Productions. I've recently changed my name on that channel to R2R Productions. So it's easier for people to find because you've been kind of getting on to me for the last couple of years about that. And then you can also find me on Reel Talk, REEL Talk on YouTube as well. So I mean, that's just the general plug I have.
That's it. Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah. So, what do you talk about on these? What happened? What happened to the Saw channel?
Oh, it's Real Talk. Like the Real Talk has just kind of become just a horror-centric movie talk, like television shows, movies, and just anything that I want to talk about, really. But it's really horror-centric. So you saw The Purge, American Horror Story, The Walking Dead, the Halloween franchise, and Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and all that other stuff, honestly.
I'm sure I'll have you back on here talking about those things. When it comes to movies, you're very passionate about it, and we can talk about all those topics that you love that I could never do because YouTube's algorithm is not good for it. We can talk about them on here. Yeah, that's what this is for. Mm-hmm. So, Rocky, let's go back, 1976. Now, I purchased the Rocky Blu-ray set, which comes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't think Creed's in that set, but I don't remember.
It's not.
I think, yeah, okay, I love that set. But anyways, and I rewatched the films right around August, September, and I had a blast watching these movies. These are some of the easiest movies to watch. There are some films that are classic films that take a while to get going, like Halloween, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, very similar film. They're good movies, but you really have to either pay a lot of attention to them or, wait for them to kind of pick up as the plot kind of, slowly kind of unfolds. With Rocky, it's like hot from start to finish. Like it's just such an easy movie to watch, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It makes it better.
Yeah, no, the one thing I love about the Rocky, not only the first film, which I still hold to this day is my favorite film of all time. I understand probably not the best film of all time, but in terms of its impact on my life and as many times as I've actually seen that film, I will defend to the death the fact that that's my favorite movie of all time and one that I think people should look to more often as probably one of the best films that's ever been created. And it's weird to think about that because it's such a low budget, just hamstrung, put together film, but it just works on almost every single level. It's passionate and it's really just enthusiastic. It makes you want to get up and run and just make a better person of yourself. Go the distance with whatever you want in life, really.
It's one of the most inspirational movies ever. You know, we're going to get to all these movies here. We're going to recap all the films and give our thoughts. We're not going to recap the movies. We assume you've already seen them, but... And that's the thing, too. I should point that out. If you have not seen Rocky 1 through 7, or Creed, which is Rocky 7, you should watch that before you listen to this podcast. And actually before you see Creed 2, because really, Creed 1, you kind of have to have knowledge of the franchise to really understand the references. With this film, it's almost like a direct sequel to Rocky 4, so you kind of do need to watch all of them, not just 4. Because, you know, they all kind of tell a story, which we're going to get to here in a minute. So, yeah, the Rocky movies are very, very, very inspirational. I want to talk about Sylvester Stallone prior to Rocky. Rocky made his career, dude. This guy was doing, like, softcore porn and, like... You know, Rocky 1 made his career. And let's be real. He's had a great career. Look, Tango and Cash might not be that great of a movie, but let's be real, all right? Rambo, Assassins. Well, Assassins was okay. It wasn't that great. But Demolition Man, Cliffhanger. Copland. Oh, great career. But prior to Rocky, it was what? Like Death Race 2000 and The Party at Kitty and Studs? What is this?
No, I just love, what was it, Bananas or something? The Woody Allen film. He showed up as kind of a gangster on a subway, just as a bit part right before Rocky. And it's so weird because he's also, at least from my memory, he's also in that same kind of leather jacket. It's basically like he's playing Rocky, but it's played just straight for laughs. Right. Like this guy was nothing. He was broke. He was poor. I mean, if you go back and watch the first Rocky film, Butkus, the dog that he has in that movie, was actually his dog, and at least the story goes that he had to give up the dog. Like, he had to sell the dog so he could get food and basically live day to day. And getting this movie, writing it, actually got him back that dog. I mean, the entire story surrounding this, whether it's a legend or fact or anything else like that, is really the same uphill underdog story that Rocky is all about. And I think one of the reasons it's such a lasting classic in the genre.
The movie is a reflection of Sylvester Stallone's career. Like, Rocky, in many ways, the franchise is a reflection of his career. Like, Rocky 6, Rocky 5 kind of fit to where his career had some big curves, you know, peaks and valleys. And then by Creed, it's almost like Sylvester Stallone had given up the control to Ryan Coogler and did a great job in doing that, because Ryan Coogler, as far as I'm concerned, is 3 for 3. You know, Fruitville, Rocky or Creed, Black Panther. Am I missing one?
No, those are his main films at this point, and I completely agree with you. Those, I actually remember when they first announced Creed. I know we're getting a little bit off topic here, but I guess that's the whole point.
No, we're talking about Rocky, dude.
When they announced Creed, I can't tell you how excited I was. Like I said, Rocky is my favorite film, and the Rocky franchise has just been there ever since I was a kid. I always thought, and as long as I think every Rocky fan thought after Rocky Balboa, decent send-off to the entire franchise is just over and done with. We'll never see it happen again. He's too old, and there's just no way they can actually continue this. But they introduced it, they announced it, they kind of gave us the idea of what it was going to be, and there was just something about that at that time where it's like, this is what we need right now. Like, this is what we need in this world, and I can't wait to actually see it. And Creed itself was an inspirational film in the same light as the original Rocky, and Creed 2. Creed 2, I have my reservations about it, but everything they've given to us from it looks amazing. I will not be shocked if I walk out of that movie with a huge smile on my face, feeling like it's one of the better sequels of the Rocky franchise.
We'll get to that because I have a lot to say about that one. But it's interesting, though, because, no, I agree. It's funny because when that movie first because that movie was rumored for a long time, I thought it was going to be a prequel. I thought it was going to be a story of Apollo, young Apollo. I remember that was the big rumor. Oh, it's a young Apollo movie. But no, it's a sequel with old Rocky. And I think you had to have him there to make the transition. What they did with Rocky and Creed is what they should have done with Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi, but they screwed it up. So, And I'm so happy that people are nowadays realizing that they screwed up. I remember Stupendous Wave, a big Star Wars YouTuber, a very good friend of mine. He does not like, or he loved Last Jedi for when it first came out for several months. And I remember I texted him a month ago, and I'm like, "Have you finally accepted the fact that Last Jedi's trash?" He goes, "Yeah," and it killed Star Wars. I had to make a second channel focusing on superheroes. I was like, It took a while for people to realize how much damage that movie did. And it's funny, Mark, bro, because I have friends of mine who worked in the business. I have a friend of mine who used to be in the movie business, and he went to film school. I talk to him all the time. And he points out things about the editing in that film that, again, when you go to film school, you have knowledge that regular people don't have. So he points out, like, the editing in that film and how it's bad. There's a lot of things, a lot of fundamentals that Rian Johnson got wrong. And Ryan Coogler is like the opposite.
Well, Ryan Coogler, it's so weird. I mean, you have a guy who makes this like one very passionate film with Fruitvale Station, and then comes into basically usurping, taking over a dead franchise with Rocky, but it's very beloved, and then just moving on to that and going to direct Black Panther, which, you know, for all intents and purposes, he did a phenomenal job. I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, everything in that movie, this guy is like, okay, I'm not only doing the first major African-American superhero movie in the modern era, but we're also going to make it basically James Bond, Star Wars, and like everything. Like it's just everything in one, and it works on almost every level. Yeah, Lion King. Right? Exactly. So, no, he does a phenomenal job, and it's so interesting to me to look at what he's done with the Creed franchise and seeing whether or not they can continue that with Creed 2. But I guess in order to get there, we have to kind of look back to where we started and how we got to that point, right?
Beautiful, beautiful segue. Let's go back to Rocky 1. So Sylvester Stallone wrote the film. What was the story about how he pitched it to John G. Avildsen? Because John G. Avildsen, well, actually, it wasn't really him. It was Irvin Winkler and Robert Shardoff. But Stallone did not direct it. Now, Stallone did direct the majority of the Rocky films, 2, 3, and 4, and 6. But he did not direct this one. What was the story behind Rocky? Tell us the whole story behind it. Because I remember, I think he got inspired by the Chuck Wepner-Ali match. Wasn't that the story?
Yeah, I mean, he got inspired. I feel like Rocky got inspired from all of these different ideas and inspiration from the world of boxing just in general. From what I've always heard, and as I already kind of alluded to earlier on, that Sylvester Stallone was just broke. He was poor. He sold his dog just to kind of make ends meet and everything. And he knew what it was like to be poor. He wrote this phenomenal script, which if you go back and listen to what he had to say about the first script or what other people had to say about the original script for the Rocky movie, there was a lot of differences. I mean, this movie really changed as it evolved and before it actually went on screen, because in the original draft of the movie, Rocky actually throws the fight. Like, that's the whole thing.
Which is very uncharacteristic of that character.
I mean,
completely the opposite.
As we know him now, of course, like, that's not what anybody would want from Rocky at this point. But he throws the fight in order to make more money, right? Because he's kind of struggling and everything else like that. And there's all those connections that you see from the that don't really translate to the other sequels, but it's in the original film. He had connections to the underworld. You know, these different mob people worked for them. It would have been feasible and understandable that would have been the ending of this movie, just to kind of make a little bit of more money. But no, it evolved as time went on, and the main story was guy was broke, selling this to everyone. They loved the script, but they didn't want to actually buy it from him because the only reason he would do it is he wanted to star. Of course,
yeah, they wanted to get like Robert Redford to do it, and he insisted that he be the star.
Yeah, and that's one of the...
And remember, when they promoted the movie in the first trailer, it was all about how good of an actor he was. And he was a good actor in that movie.
He was. The real funny story he talks about this with Carl Weathers is they brought him in. Like, this is a really funny story, actually. They brought Carl Weathers in to read for the part of Apollo Creed. Yeah. And Carl Weathers, at this point, he's a recognizable actor. He's one of the better actors, at least in that movie. And he's reading off of Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone, as you already pointed out, just a nobody. No one's ever heard or seen about this guy. And they're reading up, and Carl Weathers gets the part by saying, like, literally laughing at the producers and saying, like, you need to get me a real actor to play off of because this guy is just terrible. But it's Sylvester Stallone, right? Like, so he's just, Sylvester Stallone said it was just the funniest thing in the world, and that's one of the reasons he actually got the part, and they were just working together, like, as best buds basically since that moment. And he even talks about, they went in, they made the movie, and he went to the first screening of it. This is very low budget movie, especially for the time, and they played it. No reaction whatsoever from the initial crowd where Sylvester Stallone first watched it with other people. And he said he left the original screening. Like, he walked out before it ended because he just thought he had made a dud. This script, his starring potential, everything about it failed until he walked out and came back, and like everyone stood up and like gave him a standing ovation because they knew that they had just seen something special and very inspirational. And that, to me, that is the story of Rocky. Like, that's every single story. That's exactly what Sylvester Stallone's career has been up until this point. Falling, rising, getting back to the top and becoming just the coolest person in the world, honestly. And it's one of the reasons I love it so much.
The movie's inspirational. It's, Rocky 1 is what makes Rocky 1 so great. Now, Rocky 1 is not my favorite. Rocky 1's probably my second favorite, possibly third because of Creed being so good, but I think it's my second favorite. And I'll talk about why later, but it's the most down-to-earth human of all the movies, and it's also the one that I feel is probably the most relatable and has the best overall story. Rocky, the movie centers around four characters: Rocky, Paulie, Adrian, and Apollo. Like, those are like the four main characters of the entire franchise. And then, of course, there's Gabbo, but he's not really there. Is it Gazzo or Gabbo? I forgot his freaking name.
I think it's Gazzo, but...
It is Gazzo, yeah.
You gotta excuse me, I haven't watched the first film, like, in a little bit of time, so...
No, it's Gazzo, but he was there. But no, the film is essentially about Rocky Balboa, who's... somebody said his name is Robert Balboa. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah, like, he mentions that in the scene with him and Adrian, where he brings her back to his apartment and he talks about
weird,
like the
creepy scene. We're gonna get to that in a minute.
It's so creepy. And you know what's really funny about that? Like, if you've seen that movie as much as I have, and I'm sure you have as well, and anyone listening to this, if you go back and also listen to the commentary and various interviews, so Sylvester Stallone in that scene actually has a cold, and that's why he's sniffling so much. And it just makes that scene way more awkward than it actually was to begin with. Because he's like sitting there, he's just sniffling the entire time. It's so obvious in retrospect that he is sick. He is just deathly ill, but they need to get that scene. It's so weird that it ends with like such a passionate kiss. But yeah, like that's just a fun little tidbit.
Well, the whole story is basically about how Rocky's this lone shark. He's broke, and then Apollo... he wants to have a championship match against an unknown because it's like a big gimmick. It was like a big, huge... it was a bicentennial, so it was going to be like an exhibition fight. It wasn't really supposed to be like a big deal. And then, like what happens with Rocky movies and exhibition fights, things get pretty serious. And obviously the fifth main character is Mickey. Obviously huge character. One of the things about Rocky, and I'm not going to go through the entire story of the movie. Like I said, you should already know. I think one of the things about Rocky that makes these movies, all seven of them, great is the music. And I love Bill Conti's score is incredible. Like every jingle in this movie, the slow dun dun dun, and then of course we have the dun 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 dun, dun, which is like the most legendary song like in any kind of training. The best training music ever is that song. Yeah. And it gets remixed in every movie. When you hear it, and then of course there's the going the distance song, and I think that the music, honestly, it's like Star Wars. This movie would not hit you emotionally if it wasn't for that incredible soundtrack. Point blank, no argument, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's not even just that. If you really want to break it down even further, you got the Frank Stallone cameo that makes in the film that becomes one of the mainstays for the entire franchise. That do take it back, do like the bums singing and the singing at the very beginning of the movie that's Frank Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's brother, and he's a singer, but that's something that plays throughout the entire franchise. I mean, even Rocky Balboa starts with that, take it back.
Yep.
Do 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 do. It's like there's something so like nostalgic about that. Rocky Balboa really, the sixth film in the franchise, played off that whole recent nostalgia boost that a lot of other franchises are getting in recent years. Basically, 12 years ago when it came out in 2006. So that's really interesting when you think about it.
One of the things that, I love, we're going to get to that here in a minute, but one of the things that I love about the film as well is that Apollo Creed, and this is all because of Carl Weathers, it's not like they didn't know they were going to make a Creed movie, obviously. They couldn't see into the future. But Apollo Creed is a very likable character, even though he's a bad guy. Like, he's not a malicious person at all. He's, in the first film, he's very egotistical, very cocky, thinks that nobody can beat him. He even challenges Joe Frazier, which is supposed to be a throwback to Ali. Obviously, of course, Ali and Wepner was the inspiration, even though Stallone denied it. But he's a likable character, and he seems like a good man. Like, in the second film, he's angry and he's irritated. He's motivated to win, but he's not inherently a bad person. Same thing goes for some of the other characters, but we do have some people in this film who are just in these movies who are completely trash human beings. Like, the promoter in Rocky V. He's a horrible, horrible person. Like, there's villains. He's like the worst villain of the whole franchise in some ways, right?
Yeah, no.
Like he's more evil than even Drago has a heart. He's like a piece of iron, but. No, the first movie had the most heart, I think. It's a classic. what more can really be said before we move on to Rocky 2? Do you have any thoughts with, just the ice skating scene, which I believe, didn't they say that they could only shoot it when it was closed, so that's why they made it like that, right?
Yeah, and it's that scene, I don't know all of the details, right off the top of my head from it, but they have, all those scenes for that. It just, everything works in such a way because it just feels, and it goes to show just how much of an underdog this guy is and how pathetic he is. As long as we can talk about Sylvester Stallone being judged for the part and everything, it's important to mention this.
He did a great job.
It is actually really important to mention this when it comes to his character, and one of the reasons the Rocky character is so iconic in our cinematic language or understand history is Sylvester Stallone was born with kind of a defect. Obviously, if you've seen recent pictures of him, but even when he was much younger, when he was born, they had to take him out basically with tweezers or some kind of a tong device.
All right, move on.
I'm just saying, this is something I believe actually makes Rocky and Sylvester Stallone very popular, and one of the reasons it makes his character very believable, and one of the reasons that we get behind him as a person in that first film was it caused, the drooping that he has in his face is because that procedure caused nerve damage in his face, which makes his face droop a little more than it would have otherwise. And you already talked about that this character, they were looking at other pretty boy actors, really famous people to play this role, but he wanted to actually do that. But you're taking a character who is this professional boxer, underdog, been beaten his entire life, yep. And you have this physical, I wouldn't say deformity, but you have this physical attribute of Sylvester Stallone that nobody else has.
It makes him look like a worn-out fighter who's had a rough life.
Yeah, and it works. It works in his favor, and it's one of the reasons. Whether you realize it or not, you've seen these movies, and his physical appearance makes it more believable and thus easier to get behind him because it looks like this.
What about when he got jacked on steroids for part 3 and part 4?
Oh, he still has it, but I agree. That's as much as a fan as I am in the entire series, I really more so, at least in these later years, look to 1, 2, and 6 as my main trilogy, and then I'll watch 3 and 4 and 5 if I want to sometime down the line. But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that because I have my own little canon there when it comes to that. But I will say this. What makes this movie great, and the whole franchise also, except for everything we talked about, is, there are great action scenes and great fights in all the movies. That's not really it. It's the characters. You've got these likable characters. You've got Adrian, who is similar to Rocky. Their lives mirror each other. She's kind of a bum, kind of an unknown. She works at the pet store. Very humble beginnings. Her brother is Rocky's pretty much his best friend. He's got an alcoholism problem. He's kind of a prick. Very jealous of Rocky, which gets addressed in Rocky 3. You've got Rocky himself, who he seems to come off like a creep, but he does genuinely seem to like Adrian. He does. I mean, we know he loves her as the films progress. It shows more of their story. And one of the things that bugs me about as the films progress is that characters start to die off, and it does take away from the film because it doesn't take away from it. We'll get to Ryan Coogler and what he did, which was very brilliant, but it makes all these Rocky movies get progressively more sad. I've noticed this when I rewatch them. They're all like more and more depressing. And even Rocky 6, it's inspirational, but it is a bummer movie. These movies are bummer movies, but yet somehow manage to make you feel good about life by the end. That's a skill that I think is tremendous for a good movie. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. And, personally, looking at the entire
It's a reflection
franchise,
of life. Because in life, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but in life, like what Mickey says in Rocky 5, people start to pass away and then you're alone. And like Rocky 6, he was alone for the most part, I mean, he had the girl, the son. Go ahead. And then in Creed, he's really alone. All he has is Donnie.
Yeah,
no, not D. Free, the one in the movie.
No, yeah, like Creed is just absolutely horrendously sad for Rocky's character, but it definitely works with the idea, especially as a fan of this franchise. You've been watching this ever since, as you said, 1976. I mean, so much time has gone by since the first movie to Creed. This guy has aged. He's lost so much after gaining so much and losing it all over again. I mean,
right.
He's finally at this part of his life where, it's just time to move on. It's time to actually start accepting mortality. And that's one of the main story threads with Creed, with his character. And it's one of the reasons Sylvester Stallone got an Oscar nomination. The first one he's gotten in a very long time.
Totally deserves it. Totally deserved it. I will get to Creed, but that movie, I cried 3 times during that movie. I'm not even going to front. And I'll tell you why when we get there. Rocky 2. So Rocky fights Apollo. He loses the fight, but he still goes the distance in a split decision. I think it was a great movie because when it ended, he didn't care about losing. He only cared about his Adrian. Adrian! And she comes out, and the victory is not that it was a victory. He lost, but it was counted as a win because he was a nobody, and he went the distance on a live television show with the champion. Rocky 2 is the continuation of that. So Rocky's got money now, but also people want him to become this like kind of corporate puppet. And I think the threads of Rocky 2 works as a sequel because number one, it takes place right after Rocky 1, which is cool. I love when movies do that, like Insidious, Halloween, Last Jedi did it, but it wasn't that good. Anyways, and
there's a lot of them.
No, I love how they have that scene with Apollo and Rocky, and he's like, because in the first film, he's like, there ain't going to be no rematch. Ain't going to be no rematch. And then as he's thinking in his head, I can't believe this guy did this to me. He's like, no, I'm a man, because Apollo's a man, dude. Apollo has an ego. He is an alpha male. He's like, no, I'm not going to handle losing to this guy. And immediately challenges him to the rematch, and that becomes, really, Rocky declines. And we're like, wait, where's the fight? The story is about Rocky adjusting to the success, but also dealing with the issues with it,
Yeah, and that's one of the very first things that the first Rocky movie, and as you already talked about, there's various different continuities or ways that you can watch this franchise without really getting bogged down in the exaggeration of it all, because it does get really exaggerated.
Oh, it gets crazy as we go further and further, yeah.
Yeah, but Rocky 2 has a lot of problems, and it really shows the beginnings of how Rocky wasn't really perceived as a franchise film and how it actually progressed going forward. One of the biggest reasons is, even though it takes place right after the very first fight, you have everyone with 1976 haircuts, 1975, going into basically 80s haircuts from the very beginning of the movie. It's like, it was weird, and it always jars me, like, seeing the progression in style, even though all these events is supposed to take place very soon after that. It's so jarring once you start to look at it. But I mean, it's not just that. It's the first thing, even as Creed 2 is kind of alluding to, with Ivan Drago, the fight with Ivan Drago and what it meant to Rocky 5 and how they're going to bring it back in Creed 2. Rocky 2 still
Rocky
has that
4.
same issue where he's blind. You know, like, he gets hurt so bad with the cutting of the eye in the very first film that they have to jump on the concept of, okay, now he's kind of blind in one eye. He really shouldn't fight again because he can lose that sight in his eye and everything related to that. But they kind of forget it as they go along with the franchise. So it is interesting in that way. Like, it's the beginning of all of these inconsistencies. But as you already said, the franchise itself, the stories are so genuine, so human, so inspirational that it doesn't really matter inconsistencies one sequel to another, so long as you go in there, it makes you feel good, and you walk out with a big smile on your face and the ability or the thought that you can run 10 miles and, you know, go 15 rounds or something like that. That is the main draw point for the Rocky franchise.
And it works here too. Did you think with Rocky 2, because it's a different kind of movie. It's bad things happen to Rocky. His wife goes into a coma. That becomes a big story of the film. Did you think, number one, that it was too much for Rocky, like too much for a sequel? And number two, how do you feel about the movie overall? Because this is a lot of people's favorite movie. It's not my favorite. I think the middle part does get very, very slow and grinds to a halt, and it takes way too long to get to the point. That's one thing I don't like about the film. But the film does still capture that same kind of emotion as the first film, and it puts Rocky in a different kind of situation than he was in the first movie, and I do like that a lot. How do you feel about the movie? And yeah, what I said earlier, whatever I said, I forget.
So the one thing I love about the second Rocky film, as you've already said, is considering it's a direct continuation of the first film, it feels like, oh, we're supposed to be here. It was always going this direction. And no matter what decisions they make, it feels genuine to the original Rocky film. Something that I would have to argue 3 and 4 and maybe even 5, nowhere until like probably Rocky 6 does it feel more genuine as a sequel than Rocky 2. So
yeah, that's true.
Everything about that works in every single level. Yes, it's more comedic. I mean, seriously, you go from Rocky 1, you know, this underdog story, this guy just barely makes it to the 15 rounds, but that's all he wanted in that scene with him and Adrian laying in bed. And he's like, I don't even want to win. I just want to prove to everyone that I'm not a bum and I can actually do this despite no one thinking I can. He gets that victory. He gets the woman of his dreams saying that she loves him on the eve of that victory, like right afterwards. It just makes you tear up. Like, it's one of the best cinematic scenes I've ever seen in my life. And then you get into Rocky 2, which I think, as you said, it starts off so great. Like a direct continuation, the concept of Rocky being forced in this kind of state where he has to give up the only thing that he's ever known because of his physical problems after the first fight. He's trying to sell out in order to make money for his new wife and his oncoming baby. And the very fact that Apollo Creed just has so much of an issue that he cannot let this go because of his ego. Right. Just like everything about that flows. It's so realistic, and it makes me feel like Rocky 2 is a genuine continuation. It feels like literally the same movie, the same way. And I know a lot of people might hate this, but the same way that The Godfather Part 2 is kind of a genuine continuation of the first Godfather. Or, as you already said, if you go back, you know, like Insidious 2, it's
Halloween.
like it's
Well,
Halloween.
How do you feel about Stallone directing this one?
Oh, there's definitely growing pains. There's growing pains, and there's, as I was already going to get to, there's issues with this. It's like you can start to see the writing on the wall of the way that Sylvester Stallone would take the Rocky franchise and kind of bastardize it in the future. Yeah. The scene with everyone running with Rocky for seemingly miles, like running in full sprint.
I love that scene, but it's ridiculous. I agree.
It's ridiculous. It takes out, like, seriously, everything else is like, it's melodrama. It's there's a lot going on here, whether you can suspend your disbelief one way or the other. But that scene is like, what happened to this universe? Like, now everyone is a freaking superhero who can sprint multiple miles. And it's filmed in such a way, too, where those people who start running with him are still at the top of the pack. But if you know how Philadelphia is pulled out or anything, it's like, oh, like these people are running multiple miles. Like, it's not like, oh, they're running down the street. So it's a weird kind of fantasy-like moment for that franchise to actually do, and I'm not ever sure they got to that point again, but Rocky 2 definitely does show the beginnings of what Rocky 4, I believe, actually became just pure formula. Nothing but flashback or montages after montages after montages and awesome fight scenes.
Well, yeah, the last third of this movie, other than of course the Adrian stuff, when she's like, win, which I think that's a great fucking scene, where she's like, what do you want me to do? Win. Dun, 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 dun. What are we waiting for? I love that, bro. That's the scene of the movie, bro. So I kind of had a crush on Talia Shire after Rocky 2 and 3, not 4 because she's a bitch in that one, but in Rocky 2 and 3, she's the most lovable, best wife in the history of women, wives that are women, girls or guys, whatever. She's the best because, dude, she's in the coma, she wakes up, she's like, win, and then that goes off to the 2 training montages, like you said, and then, there's the training montage and the running of the, up the steps, and then the big finale. There is a scene, of course, where I do love the scene where he goes to meet the preacher. Okay, I got a couple prayers, I'm about to go fight. Love that. That's so like, oh my God, it's so down to earth how Rocky as a character. Rocky is a very oblivious character. Like, he does things that some people feel are inappropriate, but that's because he really, it's not that he's dumb, because they make him seem like he's a punchy dumb guy, but he is a smart guy, but he's also just very naive about he might have social issues, is what I'm trying to say, like with interacting. Did you think the last fight with Apollo was a little too much? I thought it was way too ridiculous. Apollo murdered, and now it is addressed in Rocky 3, but Apollo damn near murdered this man with I mean, because the choreography, the shots looked really nasty. Of course, it was all movie stuff, but this man almost died, and then he still won the title. I don't know.
Like, okay, that's the one big thing about Rocky 2 is if you're going to do a sequel, it's the only thing that you could really do. It's going to be a rematch between the 2 guys in the first film. Rocky's going to win this one, right? Like, he's going to win it for the team, and it has to be that. Like, it couldn't be anything else, and even when I was a kid, that's what I wanted as a kid, because I didn't really look at it in the same way that I look at it today. But just now, it's like, okay, I expect nothing more from Rocky 2 telling that same story. Again, it's not a franchise that really deserves a franchise. It's just one awesome film that somehow kind of made itself into, with probably the exception, but I guess arguing points for Rocky 5, a really solid continuity. So Rocky 2, at least in my opinion, is a really solid film, has a cliched ending. And, before we get to the beginning of Rocky 3 or the ending of Rocky 2, the couple things I want to talk about here are just little tidbits. Interestingly enough, is so they couldn't have Adrian's character at the fight. I don't know why. There's some like scheduling problem or something, so that's one of the reasons she's watching on television.
They couldn't have Talia Shire there, like, to shoot it.
Yeah, like they couldn't actually have her there to shoot the fight and do a similar ending to the first film. That's why she's watching it on television, and they filmed that kind of after the fact. So that's kind of why that is. But it works in the story because of the child and everything that they set up previously in the film. And I have to say this, I told you I wanted to say this about the second film because it confuses the heck out of me. And maybe you have some thoughts on this. Somebody else has read something about this, but I noticed this a couple years ago. I never thought of it before, but there's that scene in the first Rocky film where he's going to go on a date with Adrian, and the guy, I can't remember his name right now, tells him, you got to take her to the zoo. Well, why do I got to take her to the zoo? Because to paraphrase, he's like,
hey,
dumb
Rock,
people.
take it to the zoo.
He paraphrases like, you got to take her to the zoo. Why do you got to take her to the zoo? Because dumb people like the zoo, and he almost gets into a fight. But like that is like, okay, it's clearly insulting, right? You're making fun of this girl's intelligence, and you're just kind of,
and her looks in some ways.
Yeah, everything about her and his feelings for her and everything else like that. But as soon as Rocky gets out of the hospital, which is the most intense part of the first part of the second film, he takes Adrian to the zoo, and then he proposes to her. And it's
like you're giving into what the guy said. What's wrong with you?
I don't know why. I don't know why I noticed that probably like 8 years ago when I was rewatching all the films, and I was like, I don't understand that at all. Like, I don't know if that was intentional or they just forgot, but it's always going to be immortalized in film now.
I think it was intentional. That's my view. So that's my opinion. I think it was. Also, did you know that Stallone tore a pectoral muscle, and that's why they had to fix the whole like southpaw thing? That was actually something that was a real life injury they had to incorporate into the movie, because that wasn't the original story.
Is that right? I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, no, he tore his freaking pec, and while he was bench pressing, and he couldn't fight with his left hand.
I had heard, and the only thing I remember, and I don't know where they would have put him or anything else like that.
Oh, I remember what it was. By the way, just so you know, they couldn't bring Talia Shire to the movie because she was filming a movie called Old Boyfriend. She couldn't be on the set that day. That's so now you have the answer.
That's good. All right. I'd always heard
Adrian scenes were shot way later.
Yeah, I'd always heard that it was shot way later, but I didn't really know why. I assumed that she had conflicting shooting schedules or something else like that. Right. The one thing I did hear about, and I don't know exactly why this fell through, other than the fact that the guy that Rocky himself was actually based on was
Chuck Wepner.
Yeah, Chuck Wepner. He did, but he was supposed to be in the film. As far as I've heard, he was supposed to be in the second film
as a cameo. Yes, I think I did hear that. Yeah,
he was supposed to be like a sparring partner or something, just to kind of pay homage to how he inspired the first Rocky movie, but that just never really went through. And I think one of it was that he was so. He's kind of a messed up person. If you ever looked into his history, like he's just a weird guy, drug addict and whatnot. So obviously, it didn't really work out that way.
Right. Rocky 3, 1982. My favorite of the Rocky films. This is the movie that I think it's the most alpha, in my opinion. Has the best villain, in my opinion. I think the story of what ends up happening with Apollo is incredible. I'm a big fanboy for the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The story of what happened with Apollo and Rocky and why he lost. The music, Hulk Hogan. There are so many things about Rocky 3 that I love. Rocky 3 is the perfect balance of sizzle and steak. And like you said, the Rocky 2 staircase stuff and all that was a preview of, what would end up happening with the Rocky series. Here we have the transition. Every movie after Rocky 3, well, not everyone, but 4 and 5, had the sizzle that Rocky 3 had, but I think Rocky 3 had the steak that 4 and 5 did not. So, you don't like Rocky 3 that much.
You know what? I would have to say, just basically looking at it from my perspective is if I had to rank Rocky 3 versus Rocky 4, I think I'd put Rocky 3 before it, before 4, because it's...
Better, you mean?
It's definitely better, just because Mr. T is such...
Come on, hey, woman! Yeah. Hey, woman! Why don't you bring pretty little ass to my hotel room? I'll be dreaming, stay up all night, dreaming about being with a real man. Every line of his movie's great.
It is.
Pain. There's that, and then he's like, "There ain't gonna be no rematch. I would love to talk about Balboa, but he's lost." I forgot what he said, bro. But it's just, and then he's like, "We throw has been out of here." He's talking to Apollo. I'm sorry, I just love him, bro.
It's so like the thing is
I pity the fool.
First of all, it gives us "Eye of the Tiger" by Survivor.
Great soundtrack.
Oh my god,
this has the best training montage of any film, in my opinion. A Rocky film.
The one with him and
with the
Apollo.
Very gay running at the beach hugging. Very homoerotic that was.
It is.
It's still awesome though.
It's so good. I love it.
People make fun of that because it was homoerotic. It's like, dude, who cares? Like they're friends now. But no, continue. What were you gonna say about Apollo Creed being the best villain?
No.
What are you gonna say about boy?
Clubber Lane. Mr. T is such a fantastic villain in that movie, and the very fact that they decided, as you already said earlier, they had to start killing off characters. They killed off Mickey. The first time that I saw the Rocky movies, and this is absolutely true. We didn't talk about it to begin with, but my father brought home the 25-year VHS, those 5 films.
I love those. I remember those. Yes.
He brought home that one day, and I was I'm younger than you, like almost not a decade, but I'm younger than you, so
Gee.
I'm sorry. I'm just have to like.
You ain't that much younger than me.
No. Like I said, not even a decade. But when he brought those home, it was basically like 4 or 5 or something, and that's probably one of the reasons I love the Rocky franchises. Those are the first films that I actually remember watching, and I have to say, for the vast majority of my younger life, Rocky 3 was my favorite movie just because of the Survivor soundtrack, the very fact that even though Clubber Lang is probably one of the better villains in the entire. Yeah, he's like it's exactly, it's a male fantasy. Like everyone is jacked, everyone is like at the top of their game, and it's and the fight choreography in the final fight, even though it doesn't go the distance and it's not overly long and montage heavy.
We actually see the entire fight. There's no like montage. It's the entire freaking fight. This is the opposite of Rocky 4. There's no montage here except for the one training sequence and the beginning. That's it. Everything else is we see the whole fight.
Yeah, no, and that's like everything about it. And I really think if you haven't seen any of the Rocky films and you're still on the fence of whether or not you should actually watch them, watch Rocky 3 first. Because you don't really need the continuity one way or the other.
I disagree. I think you should go 1, 2, and 3. I don't think you should watch 3. Because 1 and 2 make the storyline arcs of 3 more important.
Sure.
Adrian, see, what makes Rocky 3 so great is that every character has an arc. That's what makes it great. All 5 of our main characters have an arc. Mickey has been protecting Rocky because he feels like Rocky became too civilized after the fight with Apollo, but also he tried to protect Rocky because the beating that Apollo gave him in Rocky 2 could have killed him. He thought he should have killed him. And then he realizes that he has to let Rocky be a man. Rocky loses, realizes, oh crap, I'm not that good of a boxer. I might have a lot of heart, but I got to learn how to fight. Apollo comes in, teaches him how to fight, has his arc where he's like, this guy beat me, but I finally let it go, and I'm going to make him the greatest of all time. Adrian's arc, where she basically is this inspiration to Rocky. She's the one, that scene on the beach where she's like, it's not about the money. We've got all that already. And then he's like, just tell me, I'm scared. When she comes to she has him realize that he is scared, but that he has to use that fear. Like, it's not about the money, it's about you. At the end of the day, it's going to be you and me. And she is the greatest woman to ever live in this movie, in my opinion. And then you got Paulie's arc, who starts the movie by, being drunk and throwing the bottle at the pinball machine, and Rocky hating him, to by the end say, Rock, I really love you. I really love you. Like, and then him and, you can tell he's kind of racist because, we're going to a colored gym. Like, he's kind of racist. And by the end of the movie, Apollo kisses him. Whatever. Dude, like, I don't care. This is a very well-made movie. All 5 characters have an arc. It's got great action, a great freaking story. Just the whole scene where Rocky goes back to Mickey's gym, and he's like, he tells him, he's like, you had that eye of the tiger, the edge. And then he's like, the only way to go back is to go back to the beginning. They go to his freaking gym, and he has to learn all of the tricks that made Apollo. Because here's the reality. Apollo is a better boxer than Rocky Balboa. But Rocky had the heart in Rocky 2. But as far as technique goes, Apollo's significantly better. He was world champion for years. And he has to teach Rocky how to dance, how to properly move his head. All these things that you would think Mick taught him, but these are like advanced championship techniques, right? And he has to learn that to go back and fight Clubber Lang. And then during the fight with Clubber Lang, it becomes an alpha versus alpha fight because he realizes that Clubber Lang's going to wear himself out by trying to knock him out in one punch. He's a knockout guy, and he wears him out. And he's like, come on. The whole ending part where he's like, come on, you ain't nothing. My grandmother is harder than that. And then he wears them down, and then da-na, 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 da-na. Dude, there's very few movies that are as good as Rocky 3, bro. Even freaking Dark Knight Rises has the same thing, man. When he fights Bane the second time, oh my god.
All I'm saying is that, yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, you really should watch these movies in order. But like, if you're on the fence as to what you believe the Rocky movies are, you've never seen any of them, and you really don't want to watch them in order, there's no other film in this franchise I think that can get you on board than Rocky 3 for everything that you just said. It's just, everything is perfectly, that beach scene gets me every single time. I mean, I there's sometimes, especially when I'm feeling down, I play various Rocky scenes on loop, like these speeches that people give to each other, because it's just so hamstrung. Like, nobody talks like this in like grandiose monologue speeches, but like, Adrian's on the beach is just probably one of the most powerful scenes in the entire franchise. I love it so much.
And the build up to it, how he's like, he's sicking, he's looking, come on, Rock, like get your head in the game. And he's just not in the game. Like and it's all because he's worried about losing everything. And she's like, you're not gonna lose anything. Let's do this for you. Like, oh, what a great freaking movie, dude. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was a bit upset when Mick died. I mean, you're supposed to be upset. And like the whole scene where he's like, hey, is it over? Yeah. He's like, oh, well, what happened? Knockout, second round. And he's like, okay, good kid. And it's like, when you think about that scene, right? Maybe if he never told him that he, quote, won the fight, he lied to him and said it made it seem like he won, even though he really didn't tell him. Maybe Mick would still be around. Mick was waiting for him to tell him that he won the fight. Because remember, that was going to be their retirement fight. And, like, he died, and it's like that guilt that Rocky had probably. Like, dude, he was waiting for me to tell him what was going to happen. And then he let himself go and die. Hey, that gets me, bro. That is very powerful. Very, very powerful.
That death scene, and I know we're going to get I know we're going to get there, but yeah, the death of Mickey, maybe it's because of the importance of Mickey in Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 and Paulo, right. Even though he's been around this entire time. Mickey's death is far more impactful than Paulo's death. Maybe Creed 2 will change that. I'm not sure, but at least in my perspective, the way I view this franchise is like, yeah, that one gets me all the time, because it's just, you get to see Rocky break down with that death, and you get to see how far he goes down the rabbit hole with like, oh, I'm nothing, and I just completely given up on who I am as a person and as a man. I can't even rise to the challenge anymore. It's like, after watching those first two movies and seeing the length that this guy had to go through, going the distance when no one thought he could, to giving up in such a way, losing in the first 2 rounds or something with Clubber Lang, it's like, man, like I said, this franchise doesn't really deserve or need to exist. But it's the moments like that where it's like, oh my God, like that's one of the reasons like these films have been so successful and people keep coming back, is because these characters are relatable and I want to connect with them more and see the progression as they go forward, just to kind of give me more motivation in my day-to-day life. And I think we need stories like that.
Yeah. Well, also with this film, I feel like it has a lot of, like, the first act is just all, like, goofy stuff, like, the Thunder Lip stuff, the Ultimate Male versus the Ultimate Meatball. Hulk Hogan was amazing. I mean, in a way, Rocky 3 is the reason why WWF is the #1 wrestling company in the world, because it was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T at WrestleMania 1 when Vince McMahon put a huge balloon payment out for his company for that show. It was Hogan and Mr. T. And really, it all got traced to this film, because this is also the movie where Hogan went to go do this film when he was told not to by the wrestling business, and it blew him up. So, in many ways, this film is responsible. Sylvester Stallone's responsible for Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania, and, Mr. T getting a career. Now, obviously, Hogan was already over, but I feel like if it wasn't for the relationship that Mr. T and Hogan had built and the idea behind bringing them into WrestleMania 1, it would not have been as big as it was. And they were on SNL the night before, I think the week before, and it blew up completely. There's a lot of factors here, but I think that the goofy stuff at the beginning, it works. And seeing Rocky kind of like goof around and, oh, I'm not taking this seriously. And then by the end, the ending of this film, when Apollo keeps telling him throughout the film, you owe me a favor, and it's that one-on-one match with no cameras, no news reporters in the gym, and he's like, ooh, I taught you good, Rock. He's like, you fight great, but I'm a great fighter. And then he comes in and they have the double punch. It's the Eye of the Tiger. Bro, I'm sorry. Rocky 3 is a perfect film. Start to finish, not a wasted scene, not a wasted frame. There's no boring parts at all. It's well-paced. It's well-shot. It's well-lit. I love how when you go to the grimy gym in L.A., it's like kind of a darker, not because there's, darker-skinned people there, obviously, because it's supposed to be like Paulie said, it's the African-American gym. That's what he said. But when you go there, like, it's just shot more grimy than the polished stuff from before. It's going back to the basics for Rocky. I love it. I love that movie.
I have to say that my favorite line in the entire movie is when they get to the area where they're going to the gym. They're in California. Where
maybe they don't like you either.
Yeah, like it's like
That's
I don't
the
like
line?
them. Yeah, I don't like them. Well, maybe they don't like you either. Well, what did I ever do to them?
I love it. Yes, I love Paulie in this movie, bro.
Yeah, it's so perfect. Like that's so relatable, and like in so many levels. And one of the reasons, like you said earlier, all of these characters, not a wasted scene, so many progressions, and so many complete character arcs for a lot of the people that we grew up with in the first three films. And like just kind of moving in to Rocky IV with that, like I said. You saw in the second film the beginnings of what the Rocky franchise would be. The third film, like you said, probably perfect. Like figuring out the formula to a T, and I think Rocky IV takes advantage of that in such a ridiculous way.
It should have ended with 3. 3, I think, was the perfect story. You turn Apollo Creed to a good guy. You kill off Mickey, but he was already old. You reestablish the flame between Rocky and Adrian, and you have Rocky re-win the championship, and they fight. That's a perfect end to the franchise right there. Rocky 1, 2, and 3. That's it. And for a long time, that was my canon. Rocky 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe 6, and this is before Creed. But here's the issue, is that Creed makes Rocky 4 important. I don't like Rocky 4. I know a lot of people out there like Rocky 4. A lot of people's favorite movie. Rocky 4 is not a good film, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. Rocky 4, it's not because it's a montage or it's too political, because it does have like 7 montages. I think they said, what was it, like 44% of the movie's a montage?
It's 3. The whole movie is like 3 or 4. I think it's like 4. I think it's major montages.
And then the intro one. So it's like there's literally montages everywhere. It's very political. It's capitalizing on the Cold War at the time, which is ridiculous. Rocky ended the Cold War according to this movie, but the villain is completely over the top, stereotypical. Not him, but more so like anything he hits, he destroys. Like that whole thing. That's my favorite character in the movie, bro. Nikolai, whatever. Anything he hits, he destroys. And the Rocky being alpha and training with that beard, that was cool. What I hate about this movie more than anything, Mark, is that this film is literally the opposite of Rocky 3 when it comes to characters and the way they behave. This film is extremely uncharacteristic. Literally characters that you developed in Rocky 1, 2, and 3 do the opposite in this movie. Rocky, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Apollo finds out about Drago. His American pride kicks in. He wants to fight the guy. The Apollo that was in Rocky 3 was content with being retired. He even said during the commentary, that's why I retired. But now he wants to all of a sudden fight Drago. Now, I get it. He has a lot of pride. Still a bit uncharacteristic, if you ask me. Rocky not throwing in the towel. I get why he didn't. It was a bad move. Adrian is completely ruined in this film. Adrian went from being the Bay of the franchise to Rocky IV being a deplorable character. Adrian from Rocky 1, 2, and 3 would never tell Rocky Balboa, "You can't win." But she says it in this movie. She's negative on everything. She is the only good scene is when she shows up in Russia. Right? That's the only good scene in this movie. With her, I mean. Just unlikable, and then the movie is building up to a huge fight at the end, and then you're watching the fight, and it's kind of like you're watching one of those indie wrestling matches where all they do is flips, because as I'm watching the fight, it's getting more and more boring as I'm watching, because they're doing the same thing over and over again. Like they, do a montage now, like get to the end, and at the end of the day, Ivan Drago realizes that he fights for me, but and Apollo dying pisses me off because I fucking love that character. And there was no reason for him to have died. He could have been hospitalized. No, they killed him in this movie. I don't like Rocky IV at all. I'm sorry. Everything for all the reasons I named. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not a good movie.
The one thing about Rocky IV that I absolutely hate, and they just continued with Rocky IV and V, is it is the beginning. As I already said, there was hints of it. Like everything wrong with continuity and storytelling can be seen in Rocky 2. Like the very fact that they just don't really care about any of that stuff and they let everything fall by the wayside. But Rocky 4 really, really plays this up in such a hammy way where his son grows up way too quickly. Like,
in 5, it's even worse.
In 5, it's much worse in 5, but that's part of it. So, yeah, like continuity wise, 4 doesn't work. Cartoonish wise, 4 doesn't work. I mean,
4 is a big cartoon. It really is.
You start from basically the end of the third film. As you said, perfect ending. Ding ding, double punch. Eye of the Tiger plays out to that beautiful portrait of them fighting.
I love it.
And then it's like it basically picks up the same night from there, and we got Paulie with his robot and washing the car and all. Like, it's just weird. And as you said, Apollo patriotism kicks in. The extended living in America scene.
I like that part though. I live in America. I'm sorry, but and then Drago's all. I like how Drago acts like a dog the first time he's seeing sunlight. He's like confused, like what's going on? What's going on in that whole scene? He doesn't even know what's going on.
It's everything about it is so much fun. Like literally, if you go into Rocky IV expecting a direct and legitimate continuation of the Rocky franchise thus far,
it's bad.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's terrible, and it's hard to really.
Not to mention, you had that heartwarming scene in 3 when Apollo gives Rocky his trunks. You wore these in our first fight, and then this movie he wears them again to die. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the music now. Let's say this: the music is great. I love the songs. There's no easy way out.
That's my favorite montage.
That's a dude. And then Dragon Ball copied it for Dragon Ball. Why are you laughing?
Yeah.
You're making it seem like
Rocky invented the modern day montage, for the most part. It's not like surprising. It shouldn't be surprising for anybody.
There's 2 training montages back to back. They show Drago taking steroids, even though Sylvester Stallone was taking them in real life. So he's a hypocrite, and I love the alphaness of that stuff where he's like, dun, 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 and then but it gets cheesy. Drago, like, all right, that's cheesy, bro.
It is. It is,
cheesy.
but it just there's okay for the time, because you got to remember that Rocky IV came out in '85, right? It was what we needed. This is like at the very beginning. This is like the very beginning of the Ronald Reagan presidency, and like the Cold War was in full swing. Like we needed Rocky to come in and literally win the Cold War for everybody, right? So it's like, yeah, like I completely understand what they were trying to do with that movie, but it's like it has not aged well. And it seems like it was more propaganda than it was actually trying to continue the Rocky story that they set out in the first 3 films. Which,
I can change, and you can change, how did it end?
Everyone can change.
Oh God, I don't like that movie, dude.
And
it's a lot of people's favorites. It's got problems.
You know why? And this is what I've been kind of alluding to this entire discussion is Rocky IV is people's favorites. Because it is nothing but
watched?
No. Well, maybe, but like Rocky IV is nothing but pure formula, and that's what the first 2 movies, fantastic filmmaking on their own, great story, continues, ends in a nice way. Might be a little cliched, but it's still interesting. Rocky III has good character progression, as you said. Those every scene is useful, not a single bit of fat in the entire film. But the problem is they didn't really have anywhere to go from at the ending of Rocky III. But they had an outline. They knew that montages worked. They knew that people wanted to see various things. It was all
sizzle and no steak, dude.
Yes.
3 had sizzle and steak. 1 and 2 had a lot of steak and a little sizzle. And then this one's all sizzle. Also, I don't know. No. Go ahead. Sorry, you continue what you were saying.
No, no, you're right. That's exactly what that was. Is Rocky IV is a lot of people's favorites because it's just the easiest to digest. I mean, that's exactly what people want, and I completely see why. I mean, I still have a whole lot of fun watching Rocky IV.
It was the first one I ever saw. It was the first Rocky I ever saw.
Is that right?
Yep, first one when I was a kid. My dad used to call it the one with the Russian. Rocky IV. That's what everybody called it, the one with the Russian, the one with Mr. T, if you don't know the numbers. Rocky V. Now, this one is the most hated one. After going back and watching Rocky V, this movie has a lot of problems, but I actually really liked it. Hear me out. It's not a good movie. it's not a very good movie, but there are things this movie tackles that I felt were, out of all the Rocky movies, some of the most realistic stuff of any Rocky film. Because the one criticism of these Rocky movies is that this guy takes a pounding in every film and is still alive. This movie addresses the fact that he might have PTSD. He might have actual PTSD, not PTSD, POTD. You know, the concussion syndrome. COPD. I was saying the wrong. COPD. He might actually have COPD. It addresses that. It addresses the corruption in the business of sports, of the boxing world, crooked promoters, and how people who you bring into your home who are your friends can sometimes betray you. And these are 4 things that were not addressed in any other Rocky movie. And they're addressed here. And I love that. I love the street fight at the end that Terry Funk choreographed. I love the Mickey scene is some of the most emotional, real shit ever. When he tells him, you lose all your friends, then you're just alone, then you came into my life. And that scene is important because that's what happens in Creed 2 Rocky. Tremendous, throwback there. Tommy Morrison, rest in peace. He's no longer with us. Real boxer. This is the first time they actually had a real boxer, play the villain. The idea was pretty cool behind him. The problem with this film, the entire issue with this movie, dude, is Stay Stallone. And rest in peace, Stay Stallone. He's also no longer with us. Rocky Jr., he is the worst part of this movie. The schoolyard stuff. Now I like the fight when he beats up the bully, bro. I like that. But I mean, the whole thing,
the
kick his ass, Dad. He took my room. Remember that line? He took my room. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Now, that I don't like, and I also do not like the fact that Rocky goes broke. You're telling me that his tax guy was so bad that he lost 6 years. He didn't pay his taxes for 6 years, and he made bad investments. This fucking guy goes to Russia for, a month, and he comes back and he loses all his money? That's stupid. Rocky's son growing up the way he did was dumb. The whole idea of, Adrian getting her job back, the whole purpose of this movie, because they got the original director, John G. Avildsen, to come back, was to go back to basics, and they tried this, but it doesn't work because it doesn't make sense. Rocky gave his accountant a power of attorney. Why don't you sue him and get that money? There's just so many things. There's so many plot holes. This movie has the most plot holes of anything. But like I said, it has those 4 things that no other movie tackled. George Washington Duke is the most vile dickhead ever with what he does to Tommy by playing with his mind with the big titties and the money. And Tommy's a dick, bro. Rocky should have never replaced his own son with Tommy. I love that storyline, but he should have never done it. Fuck Rocky for that. But the movie has the most alpha moment in the history of the Rocky franchise. You hit him like that, I want you to hit me like that. Do it in the ring. Do it in the ring. My ring's outside. There is nothing more alpha than that, bro. That's it, bro. I got goosebumps right now, bro. My ring's outside. Rocky's like, no, we're gonna fight, because he hit Paulie. We're gonna fight. Oh, I love it. I love it. And then at the end, touch me and I'll sue. Sue me for what? It's really not that bad of a movie, but there's tons of plot holes and there's stupid shit. I think if you take this film and you re-edit it, it could be a great film. Cut out all the bullshit about him going broke. Figure out a way to make it make sense. And then take out all the Stay Stallone shit, or most of it, like the school stuff. That's pointless. The school stuff is pointless. And just do that. It's a shorter film, but I think it'd be better. All right, I'm done talking. Go ahead.
What I would do with that is just have the son training, because those scenes work.
Well, he did.
I know those scenes. Those scenes work out of context as to what he's actually trying to do, because he's trying to train, to kind of step up and get his honor, but also get his dad's attention. It could work just in the latter. His Rocky is training. Rocky is training Tommy Gunn, and Tommy is taking all of his attention, but then Rocky Jr. is trying to actually get to the point where his dad's paying attention to him. It's a great way for him to bond with his father, but he's not paying attention because he's kind of consumed with glory. I agree with that. The entire stole my jacket, all this other stuff that they did with that movie, it's just so pointless. Boring and pointless.
And it's it becomes a different movie. It becomes like I'm watching a Rocky film, and it ends up being like this melodramatic teen drama for a while there. And I'm like, okay, I've seen movies like, is this Karate Kid or is it Rocky? He even has the same haircut as freaking Ralph Macchio, bro.
Can we? Okay, the one thing we have to do to discuss this, not just talk about what its merits are and why we liked it versus not like it. I completely agree with you. Anybody, I implore anybody to go back and watch Rocky 5, because I do every couple years or so just to kind of reaffirm, like, did I really hate this movie as much as I really did?
That's why I rewatched it. Yeah.
And the older I get, the more I realize I've just been really, really nasty to this film and doesn't deserve it.
Now, Stallone did admit, though, in an interview that he made this movie as a cash grab.
Probably. I mean,
he admitted it. Yeah.
I completely see that, but it's better than what people put on it. And
Agreed.
the first like what 20 or 30 minutes are just probably amongst the best in any Rocky movie. Yes, there's a lot of continuity problems.
Wait, are you talking about the part where he loses his money? That's the best?
No. Like, just everything that's going on there. Like, literally starting at the ending of Rocky 4, seeing how it's affecting him going back, he's okay, getting the challenge, deciding to retire, and everything.
Telling him that he couldn't fight anymore. It was very real. This is a very real movie. Yeah. Also, look, even though I thought it was dumb that what happened to Rocky, we have heard stories of professional athletes ending up broke because of bad decisions. So, again, there's 4 or 5 topics that were tackled here that are very real. Sorry, go ahead.
So the one thing I will have to say, though, and I think a lot of people need this for context, is Rocky 4 came out in 1985.
I'm sorry.
Rocky 4.
Yeah, 4, yeah.
5 came out in 90. So, okay, and before that, remember, as we already talked about, Rocky 4 was a cartoon. Rocky ended the Cold War in Rocky 4, right? There was nowhere else for him to go. The joke in the industry was Rocky was going to go fight aliens at this point because there's nothing in the world left for him to conquer.
Right.
That's where Predator comes from. Just that entire joke is like literally where Predator comes from. So, and that's a whole other conversation, but this is one of the reasons I always have believed that Rocky 5 went back to basics. There's nowhere left to go. And the best way to continue it is to have Rocky be more of that mentor, go into the Mickey format.
Which I like that. And they tried it with Rocky 5, but it really worked with Creed. And I do think that Rocky 5 does make Creed at 4 and 5. One of the things that makes Creed such a great movie, because I hate Rocky 4 and 5. You can cut them out of the canon and still even have Rocky 6 there and it will work. You actually could cut them if you think about it. Creed validates Rocky 4 and 5 because of the writing in that film and what Coogler did. Creed makes what happens in Rocky 4 and 5. It doesn't make them good movies, but what happens in Rocky 4 and 5 matter because before Creed, it didn't matter. And that's interesting to me. Also, did you know that Union Kane, the guy who played Michael Williams, was an actual boxer as well? And in real life, he fought Tommy Morrison. They called it the real Kane versus gun match. They did this in the real world.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and also, here's another thing. In the original script, Rocky was supposed to die. There was a scene in the movie where he, after the fight with Tommy Gunn in the streets, his brain injuries, killed him. There's a scene where Adrian walks out to like the steps and tells the world that in the hospital and tells the world that Rocky Balboa is dead. And they changed it because Rocky was saying, I think somebody convinced Rocky, all the great gunslingers don't die. They ride off into the sunset. And he did with his family. And I think I'm glad he did not die in this movie. I am so happy. I think the characters dying like that is cliche. I'm happy he did not die.
It's really interesting when you look at it like that. When you think about like Sylvester Stallone, his 2 most popular characters were both supposed to die in one film or another. I mean, Rambo was supposed to die in the first film. You can actually go find that deleted scene. It's great. But I'm really glad they didn't kill him off in either film, especially the ending of Rocky 5. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise when he walks up the stairs with his son and he's acting all old and like sluggish and he's like, you know what? I've been up these stairs so many times. I've never gone in that building. It's like that's kind of interesting. I mean, these are like historic steps. Being this huge nerd and film student that I was in college, like I actually wrote an entire 20-page essay about those freaking steps and how historic they were and like how Rocky made how Rocky kind of I made those everything about that iconic. So Yeah, like it's weird to me that was the end scene of Rocky 5 and everyone kind of brushes off that film in general. Like, oh, it's not the good one, it's the bad one, the outlier for the entire franchise. But as you already said, there's a lot of legitimately good things in that film, and it's so hard to look at it in a bottle like that because Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3 are fantastic, amazing films. Rocky 4 is just a complete fun ride, like a cartoon, super ridiculous, but
It's
fun to
also
watch.
not very long either. It's a very short movie compared to the other ones.
Yeah, and then Rocky Balboa is a genuine conclusion to the overall series, and Creed is just a interesting.
Whoa. We're getting there. Hold on.
Well,
You're
I'm just
going ahead
saying.
of me.
I'm just saying. Like Rocky 5 is the outlier. It's the black sheep of the family, and I think people undeservingly really bag on it. And I think we've seen this in other things. You and I covered Dragon Ball and everything else on other channels. People do this. Like they don't watch it. They judge it for the perception that it has publicly
like
without
GT
really
sucks when nobody ever saw it.
Yeah, that I think that like honestly, I think that's one of the things that people really bag on Rocky 5 for. I mean, this film is nearly 30 years old. So obviously, I don't know how many people who still talk about the Rocky franchise have actually seen this film in its entirety and have a legitimate opinion, let alone someone like you or me who's seen all of the films, including Rocky 5, multiple times.
Actually, here's another thing. I've only seen Rocky 5 twice for the exact same reason you just named. I avoided Rocky 4 and 5 forever. 4 I saw a bunch of times because I was a kid and it was always on TV and rented it. 5 I actually only saw like once when I was a kid. Once. And then once when I grew up. Yeah. And then when I watched it when I grew up, it was like, it really wasn't that bad. Like, there's dumb shit. Very, very, very dumb shit in this movie. It's really not that bad. Also, I like how they brought back the necklace. The Golden Glove necklace from Rocky 2. That Apollo wore. There's things like that I like. But, Balboa. Now, when Rocky 5 came out in 90. I was 6 years old. Balboa was in 2006. This is the first Rocky movie I saw in theaters. I was grown in 06. I had a job. I could go see this movie. How old were you in 06? Do you remember? So, did you see this movie in theaters? Okay. Good. Me too. Okay, so we can talk about how now this movie came out 16 years after Rocky 5. It was supposed to be like really back to basics and a good movie. So now you and I can kind of give our memories of seeing this thing. Now, before we get to that, this movie was rumored. Rocky 6 was rumored for years. I remember in like 2001 and 2000 seeing upcomingmovies.com on Yahoo having Rocky 6 there. I remember the storyboard leaked. A piece of the storyboard leaked that showed Adrian's funeral. Or, I'm sorry, Adrian's casket and Rocky which bummed me out because, fuck, we're killing off another character now. You killed off Apollo, you killed off, Mickey, now you're going to kill off Adrian. So, and that bugged me. But seeing this movie in theaters for the first time was a treat. It really was a treat. I loved it. Now, seeing it again recently, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not as good as I remembered. And I think the reason for that is because Creed does what this movie did better, in my opinion. But tell me about when you first saw Rocky Balboa, because I saw it first day as well.
Yeah, I went to go see it first day with my parents because it's always been like, especially for me and my dad, it's always been that type of franchise for us. You introduced it to me when I was younger, and I was elated. That's the best word. Is I was so excited to see a Rocky film first run in theaters for the very first time. I haven't seen any of the other films besides the first one in a theater setting. With one of those special showings from Rocky a couple of years back, I actually got a chance to see the first one. I will never forget that experience. It was probably one of my favorite all-time movie-going experience, seeing Rocky Balboa and just being completely blown away. Probably a lot of that was because how much more can they do with this character? It's going to feel like a wash. It's not going to feel like genuine. This guy can't come back, and if he goes the distance with anybody at this point, he's so old.
Especially Antonio Tarver. I mean, it was basically based on Antonio Tarver. They even used stock footage of the actual fights. He's actually from here where I live, but legit boxer. He's not even a heavyweight. I think he's a cruiserweight. But either way, the movie does have two endings, though. But we'll get to that. Continue what you were saying. Also, this movie brought back Spider Rico. This movie,
God, love it.
Yeah, this movie was the real kind. This movie is what Rocky 5. It's like they apologized for Rocky 5. Like this is what Rocky 5 should have been.
But I think that's what the entire purpose of this movie was. And you can actually find dialogue or comments from Sylvester Stallone talking about this movie, and it was super weird. Like this is right before Creed actually came out, so this was actually really weird. People got a hold of this dialogue that he was telling with people about Rocky Balboa, and they thought he was talking about Rocky 7. And he was talking about like, oh, I'm getting older and everything, but this is something that if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. Like, this is the type of film that I want to make.
This movie, just like Rocky 1, is a reflection of Sylvester Stallone's life at the time, right?
It was his comeback. I mean, to be fair,
no, he started doing Expendables and all these other fun movies.
Rambo came back and everything. Rocky has always been a direct extension of Sylvester Stallone's life. This guy, we've been talking about the film itself, but let's talk about the man. Rocky, the Rocky franchise, has always been an extension of who he is and where his career is. Whenever a new Rocky movie comes out, he falls, he rises, he falls, and he rises. I mean, go back to The Critic, that old cartoon show. They have a joke about that. They have a legitimate joke about Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, and the way that his career kind of goes up and down when it comes to these movies. He rebuilds himself with Rocky every single time, and that's what Rocky Balboa is, why it works. And you know what? I know it's corny. I know it's cheesy. Rocky Balboa, the best thing about that, other than those two speeches he gives, one at the hearing about his eligibility to box, another one with his son outside of the restaurant.
The son speech is legendary.
It's great.
Legendary.
I could probably I know I've listened to that so many times.
Do you think that speech is uncharacteristically too intelligent for the Rocky character?
No, I don't. Like, I understand where that comes from. I personally think that, like, his speech to the Senate is a little bit more uncharacteristic. Because we've been hearing, like, the entire set, like, Rocky's not dumb. As you already talked about, like, in the first, like, 3 movies, he's obviously more domesticated and intelligent than what he came off as in the very first movie. So it works in that sense. But it's just, I feel like this movie substitutes montages and epic scenes for character moments and speeches like that, because there's a lot of them in there.
Yes, this movie, I think with this movie, Rocky Balboa tries to do more steak than sizzle, but the problem is that the steak is good, it's just not, it's like they're giving you too much steak. Like, thank you so much for the steak, but you're giving me too much. They bring back Marie. Now, little known fact, in the original script for Rocky 5, Marie was supposed to come back, the girl from Rocky 1. In this movie, she kind of becomes this, I don't want to say love interest, but it almost comes off like that. Like, Rocky builds this relationship with her and her son. And she's kind of this love interest, but after rewatching the film, okay, I thought that the relationship between her and him was completely pointless, honestly. Because they could have put any character there. They could have had anything. And I thought it went on too long. Rocky's doing all these inspirational things, like, as an older guy to her son. It just felt like her stuff felt very unnecessary. She was there at the end. It should have been his son instead. I feel like they did this character and his son, I think, were done better in Creed with Donnie and with the deaf girl. I think the ideas here were kind of recycled in Creed, but done better in my opinion. Also, seeing the movie in theaters, right? I just want to say, the montage was, dun 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 dun. The whole, we're gonna hit him with some hurting bombs, like
Duke,
hit him hard, yeah, Duke. This is his last movie, and also the fight at the end of the film was shot with high definition cameras, not with film. That was a tremendous touch, because this is the first film in the Rocky series that actually makes the fight seem like it's on pay-per-view with the HBO logo. They got Stitch there. They got all the HBO commentators there. It felt like we were in the real world. Did you think that having the simulation be the trigger for Mason Dixon, do you think that made sense?
Yes. Like, okay, that's one of the things.
Mason Dixon's a very chill guy based on the movie. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, like, well, I think the story itself makes sense, and whether or not the simulation being a trigger and being realistic, I personally think it's realistic with his character, because everyone is doubting his ability to be like the champion. Like he wins fights too quickly. The sport's going downhill. Everyone's losing interest in your championship. You need something to shake it up. And then you go back and you talk about like Rocky Balboa, his legacy, and the way he would fight Mason Dixon in his prime. Like, I don't care. Even to this day, I love that plot point. Because
I agree.
It's just a way. I think it encompasses, especially what sports media was talking about, like ESPN
also,
and all those people were like.
Didn't Stallone get knocked out in this? Like legit knocked out. I know that him and Drago stiffed each other, but didn't he get knocked out here at one point?
Well, like he almost died. We didn't talk about that, but he almost died with Rocky IV because of a punch. But no, I think he did get hurt. Like he definitely got hurt making this film. The best thing about this movie is because this is right before the renaissance of Sylvester Stallone in the mid 2000s. Like you can definitely see the progression he has with getting back into shape from this movie to like where we were in the Expendables. Like he is definitely out of shape, a great shape for his age. But I don't think he was like physically prepared to do this movie in the same way that he was probably in 2010 or maybe even just today. Like that's crazy to think about.
Also, the movie has two endings. One where he wins, one where he loses. The theatrical cut, he lost. Which one do you think is
better? Oh yeah,
opinion?
him losing is better. Him losing is like there's no question. Like
I agree.
Like to go back to basics, to go back to like what is it that you're fighting for? Paulie like losing his job, talking about after this whatever's left in the basement, there's no more, and all that. Like Adrian left. Adrian didn't leave. She died. Like that. That's what makes this movie.
The Adrian, I was just going to say that. The Adrian death, I was mad, but it really made this movie, like you said, because Rocky's now alone, and Paulie's alone. That was his sister. And it's that's the most heartbreaking part. In fact, the final scene of the movie is when he goes to the grave and he's like, yo, Adrian, we did it. Just, oh my God, dude, like...
Dude, like
it's too much. It's too much.
The beginning of the movie. The beginning of the movie is going on the trip with Paulie, and Paulie's just drunk, drinking. Like we do this every year. This is dumb. Like you go back to the freaking torn down ice skating rink or something, and back to your old place. Like it's dumb. And then he goes and he's talking to his son. After that speech,
he can't get over it, bro. He couldn't get over it.
That legendary speech he gives to his son, and then he ends it. It's like, don't forget to visit your mother. It's like. Man, like, you talk about the beach scene.
He loved her. He really loved her. Yeah. And this movie... Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying this movie really showed that he loved her.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that they took her off. They didn't need to, but it really goes to show how much he's lost and how much... like, Rocky is the punching bag. He's the person who's going to keep going despite all odds. And that's one of the things they've gotten through. And as you've talked about throughout this entire discussion, he lost Mickey, he lost Apollo, he lost Adrian. We'll get to that, but he loses Paulie. He lost his son. He moves away. It's just, oh my God, like that's inspirational. That's life. That's one of the reasons I think we go back to these movies and we want to watch them. One of the reasons I love them so much.
Right. So where would you rank? This should be the end right here, or is there more?
No, like yeah, that would be the end. Yeah.
Like okay, what I mean to say is if the series would have ended here, like would you have been happy? Like cuz I was happy with this being the ending. I think it's a more satisfying ending than Rocky 4 or 5 to me in my to the franchise.
Yeah, no, I was happy. I was happy for what they announced Creed in like 2013, like the very end of 2013. So like I was happy for theoretically like 7 years or 6 years or something like it.
Yeah,
it is a legitimate conclusion. But I think one of the things Creed shows us is the Rocky formula, the Rocky story, or what it means is beyond what Rocky is. I mean, these are inspirational stories. It's one of the reasons we keep coming back. And it's not just Rocky. It's stuff like Dragon Ball and all this other stuff. It's like it's inspirational. These are characters we can get behind, and they motivate us to keep going forward, and it gives us drive.
You said that like 5 times on here, bro. You said that like 5 times on here.
I'm just telling you, like that's one of the reasons I love Rocky so much. Like that's what it is.
I do.
Like,
I know. All right, Creed. Here we go. Rocky Balboa. That's the end. What do you think about at the end of the movie when they have those people like, you know how Rocky Balboa ends with the people like on like they have the song and they have the people at the stands.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
So Creed, it's technically a spin-off movie, but I call it Rocky 7 because it really is a Rocky movie, but Rocky's not the main character now. Now this is basically what they tried to do with Rocky 5, except more effective because now we have Donnie, who is the illegitimate son of Apollo Creed. And the story is about him. And what I was worried about is that before the movie came out, that Rocky would overshadow Michael B. Jordan. Obviously, I knew Michael B. Jordan was a great actor, and he still is. He's one of the best, actually. But the way it was written, the way Ryan Coogler... We talked about it earlier. We're going to talk about it more now. This was the perfect... This movie is so good that I've seen people say it's as good as the original Rocky, and I can't even deny it. This movie is both a sequel to Rocky 1, 3, 4, and 6, and 5, but it's also like a soft reboot and also like a remake of 1 and a remake of 5 done right when it comes to 5. It's a lot of things, right? It took the Rocky formula into the modern era. We have a modern soundtrack with Nas and The Roots mixed in with the classic Bill Conti music. And they saved the Bill Conti music until the end for the final round when Rocky gives him that incredible freaking speech when he's like, you taught me how to fight again, and I love you, kid. Dun, 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 dun. And it's like, dude, all right. I didn't cry like boo-hoo, but I got teary 3 times during this movie. I got teary when Rocky I don't know, I like this. I think you hate it when Donnie says, who won that fight? The fight at Rocky 3 in the gym, and then Rocky's like, he did, which was incredible. The scene where Rocky says he has cancer destroyed me because I lost someone. I lost my mom to cancer. So when that happened, because here's the thing, let me tell you something, Mark, about this movie. I went into it with no spoilers. I did not want to know what happened. I didn't know if Rocky died in this movie. I did not want Rocky to die. And I'm actually scared he's going to die in Creed 2. So when he finds out he has cancer, I'm like, oh my God, please don't tell me the movie's going to end with Rocky dying. I'm going to be pissed if this happens. And then at the end, bro, at the end of the movie when he's sitting there and they're beating the fuck out of each other and then fucking he gives him the speech. What an incredible fucking movie, dude. This is... I mean, I know a lot of people think that probably Black Panther, I mean, it is like, Coogler's like biggest movie, but I think this might be his best movie. It's your turn to talk now.
It is his best movie by far. The thing is Ryan Coogler's a fantastic creative director. I mean, he's a fantastic storyteller, but he came into this movie, and the one thing that I was really worried about, as I think you already said you were as well, is Rocky Balboa ended it in a really nice way. It didn't need to come back.
Right.
Doing a story about Creed, especially when it started coming out, I heard about this before the movie came out, and it made me pause. I think they've really picked it up in a really nice way, but Adonis was an illegitimate child of Apollo Creed, which is okay. Like, I guess that was like,
and they try to play it up like Apollo loved him and all that when Apollo really didn't know him. That was kind of weird. Yeah,
like it just, the reason that was bad for me is it didn't play well with the vision of what we got from Apollo in Rocky 2. And as you already said, like, this is a sequel not only to Rocky 1, Rocky 3, like, this is just the entire thing. Yes, it's a spinoff, but it acts like a legitimate... It's got elements
of everything.
Yeah, it acts like a legitimate continuation, and it made me worried. Like, was this necessary? Couldn't Adonis just have been, like, a legitimate child of Apollo Creed? At least that's what I thought going into it. And then you watch the movie.
They had to create that to, like, build, like, sympathy. Right?
No, it's not just sympathy, but you watch the movie and you realize that this is a legitimate part of his character. And it really builds into what the original story of Rocky really was, is, are you worthy? Nobody thinks you're worthy. Like, you've just kind of been thrust into this limelight because of a random happenstance. Like, Adonis didn't belong here, but he knew he did. That's why he was going to Mexico fighting and all these other things.
He's his own man. He's not just the son of Apollo Creed, but everybody sees him as that.
Yeah.
The promotion of the fight.
And you know, like, it didn't seem like the right artistic direction when I first heard about it, but watching the film and seeing how it played out and seeing the vision of Ryan Coogler come through, it's like, wow, he understood it better than I did. Like, he really had a story to tell.
What about how they had like the little graphics on the screen, like the records of the fighters when they're about to... Like, that was very creative. And I'm the kind of guy who, if you're doing a sequel to a film, I think you should keep the same kind of directing style. Like, you know, like Force Awakens looking like the other Star Wars movies worked because it looks like a Star Wars movie. It feels like a Star Wars movie. You got to keep the music. This movie was so well crafted because Coogler was like, I know it's a Rocky movie. I have to keep in the tradition of these other 6 films, but it's also a reboot. It's also a new character with some familiarity, and so he added the new stuff with familiarity, and it worked. I was very worried about it not working, and it worked. What a great fucking movie this is, bro. And what do you think about Anthony Bellew as Pretty Ricky as a villain? I thought he was okay, but probably not the best villain.
Well, definitely not the best villain, but they didn't give him enough time. I mean, you have to be clear. Like, you have to give the majority of the movie to Adonis Creed. I mean, Carl Weathers really stole a lot
and
of
the
his
relationship
scenes.
with him and Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, of course. And she's fantastic too. I love her, and I really feel like I'm worried about the way they're going to use her in Creed 2, but I guess we can get to that. The thing is you have to give a lot of this to Michael B. Jordan. You have to explain who Adonis is and show his character. The problem is probably nobody is Carl Weathers. I mean, he just has so much screen presence that whenever he showed up in Rocky, even though he wasn't the center point, like the focus, he just stole every scene. So like you walk out of the original Rocky or you watch it the first time, you're like, that guy is memorable. And that's one of the reasons they kept him for the first 4 movies, because he's just fantastic. He's a great actor. He's a great character. And doing a movie about him or his illegitimate son is a great idea. The one thing I have to say, and you already mentioned this, but I will go against you here. I hate the fact that Rocky gives up that secret so quickly. I don't understand why. Like, to me, that seems like that seems like something that would have been better served by the ending of the movie.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. No, I see where you're coming from with that.
Because it wasn't like a legitimate question. I never really thought, oh, who won that fight? But as we already talked about, Rocky 3 ends on that fight, and Rocky 4 picks up like right after that fight happened, because Rocky has the black eye from that punch. And he has the mural on it and Rocky Balboa, so there's definitely a lot of connection to there. But it's just like, okay, like, why did he give that up so easily? Like, it would have been a really good emotional impact. Like, right at the end of the fight, the last round that they're going to fight, everything like that, he goes, you know what, I never told you, like, your dad won that fight or something. It's like, oh. And it's just like that extra push you need, you know? But
yeah, but the speech he gave was still great.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And, like, the whole idea, like, when he gets cancer and he's like, oh, I'm going to train in the hospital. Like, oh, my God. The movie is meant to rip your heart out. But the thing I love about it is you're thinking, oh, no, it's another heartbreaker. It's another Rocky 3 or 4 or 6. And it's not, because Rocky does not die. Donnie does not win the final fight, but it didn't matter because the guy, you know, the champion came to him and was like, you know, Bellew was like, you know, you're the future of this division. He's like, respect. Like, it's a perfect ending, dude. It's Apollo Creed's son gave Rocky a reason to live, and that's very powerful, especially if you're old, especially if you're lonely.
And how everyone how everybody in the movie kind of coalesces around Adonis, but there are some people who hate the fact that Rocky is giving him so much attention, and it's like, oh man, especially, and it really connects very well to Rocky Balboa, because even though they ignore a lot of it, they ignore a lot of Rocky's popularity in his own community. It doesn't matter in this regard. Like,
plus,
because
he's still got the restaurant too. There's cool stuff, I think.
No, like people come, they hear stories. I mean, that's part of the movie. I mean, like they continue that, and then also there are people who want him to come help on the sidelines because he still has that recognition, and they're going to give him some extra clout for all these other boxers who are vying for the title and all that stuff. There's a lot of connection. Baby Duke is also a nice little throwback to the
Wood
original.
Harris, Lil Duke, yes,
Lil Duke, yeah. But it's great. Like, I really really liked Creed. I'm not sure how I think about like I got a shit scene. It's fun comedic timing. Like, oh, it's kind of like a nice relaxation before an intense fight scene. That first fight scene, dude. The one shot where the entire round
where
is
he
like
got
them,
rocked.
Yeah,
no, you're right. It was all one shot. It was in one shot. Yeah, there was no cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a nice comedic beat right before that scene, but it's still like a weird, like, to me it kind of felt out of place. I understand why they put it in there, but that's another scene where it's like, you don't really need it one way or the other. But it was okay.
It was more so Coogler flexing he could do it. That's the way I saw it. Oh, look what I can do. That's what I saw. Some new directing techniques for the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
There really weren't that many montages in this movie at all.
You don't need them. I think that's the one thing with Creed 2. Like, I feel like there's going to be at least one or two montages, and that getting back to basics.
Let's talk about Creed 2. All right, let's talk about Creed 2. So, well, first of all, before we talk about Creed 2, what's your ranking of the films? Rank your Rocky movies from favorite to least favorite. I'll go first. Or do you want to go first?
Okay.
I'll go first. All right. Rocky 3, Rocky 1, Creed, Rocky 2, Rocky 6, Rocky 5, Rocky 4.
Okay. Mine is definitely Rocky 1, Rocky 2. I would say Creed, Rocky Balboa, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, and Rocky 5.
You would put 4 above 5?
I would put 4 above 5.
Okay. I put 5 above 4, but only... Actually, wait. I don't remember. No, you're right. I think 4 is a little bit better than 5, but they're bad for different reasons. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem, is that they're bad for different reasons. But here's the reality. I almost feel like watching 5 is just more refreshing, maybe because I haven't seen it so much. Because 4 is overexposed. Everybody knows about 4. 5 is, like, not really talked about.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's a perfectly legitimate explanation. Like, no one's seen, as I was saying, like, no one's seen Rocky 5. Everyone just has a perception of Rocky 5.
Right. All right, Creed 2. I got to be honest with you. I'm worried about this movie because I don't like Rocky 4 at all, and this is supposed to be like Rocky 4. I feel like with this film, I'm worried they're going to go to the same idea with Rocky 4, where it's going to be all sizzle and no steak, and I worry that it's going to end up being a lot of montages, like you said, and basically like a soft remake of 4 with a little bit of heart, but not as much as they probably should have. And I worry about that. Like, I worry that the movie's going to have, a very strange motivations. We know that Donnie wants to fight Ivan Drago's son because Ivan Drago killed Apollo, and then Ivan Drago wants revenge for losing to Rocky through his son Victor. And we actually know that Bridget Nielsen's going to be in the movie, bro.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the
awesome.
Wife. That's awesome.
She used to date Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah,
right?
It's his former wife.
Oh, they got married. Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know they got married. Yeah. So Sylvester Stallone wrote the screenplay. So I mean, it could be good. What do you think about this movie? I hope it's great. My concern is where's the story going to... I'm in the same boat like a Rocky 5. Where does the story go from here? Like, is Donnie going to go after the championship and get it here from Stuntman Wheeler, like his rival? Or is he going to like go in there and lose? We know in the trailer he ends up in the hospital at some point. So what are they going to do with this movie?
Do you want me to tell you what I think the movie's going to be about? Literally plot point to plot point, or just...
Well, no, just if you want, your prediction on the film and what you're worried about, your thoughts, what you've seen so far with the trailers. Give me some hope it'll be good.
Okay, so there's a lot. That's a loaded question. First of all,
I will say that the acting will be great. I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure it's gonna be good.
But
First
Ryan Coogler is not directing this film.
No,
Ryan Coogler's not directing it. It's Stephen Capel Jr., who I have no idea about this guy, bro. He has like no resume. He did The Land and Grownish, which I've never seen, or Grownish. It's a TV show. I don't know. This is bad. I don't know. Bro. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah. The thing about this movie, first of all, as you already said, Sylvester Stallone, he was supposed to direct it, but he stepped down. And interestingly enough, he stepped down when allegations that never really went anywhere started bubbling up. But then anyway, he did write it, which could be good or bad. I'm not sure. Modern day Sylvester Stallone, I feel like it could be really bad, especially with going off of Rocky 4, like jumping off of Creed into like almost a direct sequel into Rocky 4.
I'm sorry, but bringing back, let's be real, bringing back fucking Drago is like bringing back Broly. It's a
Yes.
marketing move.
Yes, it is, and it's what they knew. They knew they were doing it, and you and I talked about this even before they even started talking about it. And we were saying like you could do that. Like, I'm pretty sure you and I talked about this even before. And it's
We
like
did
you could do this.
The movie talk. A while
Yeah,
ago.
like you could bring back Drago. I mean, it's a huge story in the Creed in the Creed mythology, but you don't do it next. Like you could do it for the third film, but don't do it next. It's almost making the Rocky franchise, this new Creed franchise, into the same wheelhouse as things like the Batman Begins into the Dark Knight, like saving your biggest villain for the sequel. Like it feels like that. It feels a little comic booky, and that's kind of making me a little scared. It has the power to, if they do it right, legitimize Rocky 4 though. Like if this movie's good, it might just do enough to legitimize Rocky 4. As you already said, it's too cartoonish. It's a bad movie in its own right, bad for its own reasons. I mean, but Rocky 4 going into this movie is like, okay, yeah, like I understand where they're going, and now at least they had a vision, or it seems like they had a vision or understood what to do with it later down the line. Personally, I think we're going to get into more montages. Just based off the trailer, it looks like a couple of montages, and what I believe is going to happen is we're starting the movie with Adonis already gaining the title. I think we're skipping over that completely.
I think you might be right, yeah.
We're skipping over that completely. Ivan Drago, his son's going to come. They're going to come in, a challenge. He's going to jump right into it. And this movie, even though they're marketing it as Rocky 4, is going to be basically Rocky 4 meets Rocky 3. We're going to have the two fights. He's going to get beaten, battered, and bruised.
I thought the same thing, actually, yeah.
And then he's going to go back to his roots, train like that, come back and win.
He's going to be worried that he's going to end up like his father, right?
Yes. Yeah, and he's going to go back to his roots, train, come back, win. The last fight, I don't think will go the entire round. It'll just be kind of more of a spectacle thing. Maybe, I'm not sure. I would actually prefer a Rocky 3 final than a Rocky 4 final where it's just like all montage.
What are they going to do with Ivan Drago and Bridget Nielsen? Because I feel like with those characters, there's potential to create a very interesting storyline with their development since the Rocky 4 debacle, where I wonder, like, is Ivan Drago feeling guilt for taking that man's life? I think he would. I think, because these are humanistic characters. They're not just cartoons, even though that movie was a cartoon. I think maybe Drago is feeling guilt for what, and maybe fear that his son's going to come. And you see what I'm saying? Like, or maybe he has regrets.
I think he's mad.
Know.
I think he's just mad. Like, I hate to say that, and I hope you're right. Like, 100% I hope you're right. But I think he's angry, and he wants revenge.
I like Dolph Lundgren. At least he's getting a payday. I like it.
And then we have, like, I really think that that's how it's going to play out. And it feels like not only it's going to be 3 and 4, but they also kind of mixing in a little bit of Rocky 2, doesn't it? Like, based off all the trailers.
Yeah, he has
a
a
family
kid
now.
now. Yeah. But is he going to be, like, on doing commercials? Is Donnie doing commercials?
Probably. I mean, he's going to have some fame. Like, oh, you have so much to lose. There's a lot of Rocky 3 and some of the dialogue that we heard from this. And, like, to me, the reason I'm a little bit worried, even though it looks visually stunning and every single trailer...
It does look good. Yeah, I agree.
Every single trailer makes me more excited. Like, literally, the first time I heard what Rocky or Creed 2 was actually going to be about, Rocky 7, Creed 2...
Rocky 8.
Rocky 8.
This is Rocky 8, yes.
So, yeah, Rocky 8 is like, oh, that's terrible. I'm not really very excited about this. I really hope that they do this well. And then everything I've seen since then, every single trailer, every single thing that anyone's said about it, any image is like, oh, this looks actually really interesting, and I can't wait to see it. It's actually gotten me more excited than I was when I first heard about it. And it's weird to think about that because we're actually in an age of nostalgia. As we already said multiple times in this video, Rocky 4 came out in 1985. That's a long time ago, and people are willing to see Drago. I like the people who don't pay attention to this, and I'm sure like anyone listening to this who might not have been paying attention to this since the beginning or as long as you and I have, I wonder what the reaction to all of this news was in that first scene in the trailer when you first see the name Drago. Like, what was that reaction for those people who didn't know? Because I think like that would be a jaw drop moment,
Yeah. I mean, Dolph Lundgren, I think, is a better actor now than he was back then. So if they do some emotional stuff with him, I think it could work out. You know, he can do it now.
I hope they do. I really hope they do, because to me, though, it just, like, just the pessimist in me, like, it's so much to juggle. Think about that. You have to juggle Adonis, where he is in his life with all these characters in Rocky, and then you're also going to reestablish the Drago family and where they are and how they've been dealing with the last couple of decades. Like, it's just too much, you know?
And also, I feel like, no, I agree. It's a lot, and I hope that they're able, and then also the parenting and dealing with his wife going deaf and all that. I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping it's good. I'm going to go see it opening night. Are you going to have a review on Real Talk or not? We're going to review it at all?
Yeah, I'm probably going to. I'll definitely review it. I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I'll probably just talk about it for 30 minutes on nauseum.
Yeah, well, I will definitely do a review on World of Geekdom about Rocky 8 or Creed 2. But I'm sure we'll probably come back at some point and maybe discuss together on here at some point, maybe when it comes out on Blu-ray or something. I just feel like if it's good, we'll have stuff to talk about. But I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also I'm going to use a phrase from a long time ago. I'm cautiously optimistic. You know what I mean? And I have no reason. People say, well, why do you feel that way if Creed 1 was so good? Because Creed 1 had a lot of things going for it. A lot of things going for it, including Ryan Coogler. This does not have any of that.
Well, I think the biggest issue here is that Creed 1 was written by Ryan Coogler. And Ryan Coogler came in with the passion.
And he loves Rocky. He loves the franchise.
It was a story written in honor, as he said multiple times, for his father. Like, his father introduced him to the Rocky franchise. It was the thing that they bonded over and everything. It was kind of like a love letter to his father, and it plays out as such. And Creed 2, greenlit, written by Sylvester Stallone, not Ryan Coogler. And Sylvester Stallone, at least for Creed, had to be convinced. Not once, but like multiple times. They had to get his attention in order to actually make that movie to begin with. So, yes, Sylvester Stallone is a far better writer than most people would actually give him credit for, but he has a varied, colorful history when it comes to writing Rocky movies. And considering the fact that Creed, or what Creed actually became, wasn't his vision to begin with, can he actually take it up and adapt it, not only as a sequel to that original film, but also a sequel to probably one of his most divisive, cartoonish, and just terrible films in the entire franchise, at least when it comes to the story. So it's a lot to juggle, and it just feels like a bad idea on paper. I mean, definitely a money-making idea. Like, it's a profitable idea on paper, but creatively it just doesn't seem to work. So we'll see if they can defy all logic and expectation there.
Right? Yeah, we'll see. All right, that's it. Almost 2 hours. Well, about 2 hours here on the Geekdom101 podcast. We covered all the Rocky movies. I don't have much else to say, Mark, bro. You already plugged your stuff. Well, I'm sure we'll check out World of Geekdom and check out Reel to Reel's channel, and I'm sure you'll get thoughts and analysis of Rocky 8 very, very soon. So thank all of you for listening, and thank you for being here, bro.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure, and I'm finally glad I was able to actually join you on one of these podcasts.
I'm sure you'll be back many, many times. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of movies, especially next year. Next year's another franchise year next year, so every year is a franchise year in the Hollywood. So I actually want to get you on and talk about. Remember we talked about the box office idea you had? That'd be a good topic to bring you back on.
Oh, I'm always up for a box office discussion. You know me.
Yeah, because you like numbers. Didn't you say you were going to pull up the box office of the movies?
I did, but I decided not to. It never really came up.
It doesn't matter. The Rocky 4 sucks. Anyways, thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all next time. And welcome back to the Geekdom101 podcast. And joining me on this edition of the show, we're going to go back and reminisce on the 7 Broly... Did I say Broly?
Yes, you did. The Broly films.
Don't stop. You know what I'm thinking. Yeah, don't stop recording. We're going to put that in at the end as a Easter egg or whatever. What do you call them? Outtake. Here we go. All right, take 3.